Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Embroidery Hub, and in today's episode I'm going to be showing you guys how to do two types of applique. Now it's actually been quite a while since I've shown you guys how to do applique, so I wanted to do an updated video with what we're using now and how we were able to create some applique lettering on our software Ricoma. So not only are you going to learn how to create and embroider applique lettering on your own, but you're also going to learn how to embroider a stock applique design. And this one is a little bit different because the edges are not finished off with a satin stitch, and I'll show you exactly what I mean once we get into the project. So now let's just jump right into what it is that we're going to be embroidering on and what we'll be using in this episode. So I'm actually going to be embroidering on this black little tote bag right here, and I'm going to take this little plain bag and turn it into something very cute and personalized. As for embroidery materials, I will be using tearaway stabilizer just because this is a tote bag that I'm probably not going to wash and wear frequently. Remember, if you don't wear it, tear it, which is why I'm using tearaway stabilizer, and I'm actually going to use 2 sheets just so I can have some added stabilization. I don't need to use cutaway in this instance because not only is this something that I'm not going to wear and wash frequently, but this is also something that does not require so much support. With a design like applique, you have fabric as a base instead of thread. Therefore, your stitch count is highly reduced. And I actually believe this is just about, it's just about 3,700 stitches, which is, for those of you who are familiar with embroidery, you know that that's a very small and quick design to embroider. So for my fill for this design, I'm actually going to be using a piece of white felt fabric, and I love working with white felt fabric for this type of applique because you're going to quickly see that the applique does not have a satin stitch border. Instead, it is appliqued on with just like a little simple, I think it's like a triple running stitch going around. And basically what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut around to make our own edge. And that's why I like using felt for this type of applique, because this one is supposed to look a little rugged. That's part of the look. So we don't want that finished satin stitch. Instead, what we're gonna do is just cut it out, and felt is perfect for that because it does not fray at the edges. And when it comes to applique, cutting is involved. So of course I have my handy dandy applique scissors. I love these, and the way that you can tell that these are applique scissors is because they have that nice curved tip, which is going to give you a lot of flexibility to cut around and get a nice clean cut. So we've covered stabilizer, we have covered what we're going to be using as the base, as the applique. We've covered the scissors that we're using, which is a huge part of applique, so make sure you get yourself some good applique scissors. And then of course, another huge part of applique is having some good temporary adhesive spray. So right now I'm using Sprayway Fast Tack 87, and I picked this up at Textile USA. It was only $8, so it's a pretty decent price for how long this is actually gonna last you. One last thing I almost forgot to mention that we're gonna need is chalk, and this isn't specifically to applique, this is just in general for our centering. So what I'm gonna do is just use this chalk to mark my center. This is just regular chalk that I got at the office supply store. However, there is embroidery chalk that you can pick up as well. Although it's not embroidery chalk, I do find that this chalk is still pretty simple to remove, and it is applique, so it's gonna be covered up anyway. So I have never really had any issues just using regular chalk. So for centering my toe, I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of eyeball it because this is a pretty easy tote to fold. So I'm just gonna fold it perfectly in half, making sure that the seams are lined up together, and then I'll be able to open it up and draw a line right across the fold. So that's just a very simple, easy way for you to mark your center when you're just pumping out orders and you have a simple applique design like this one to make. So now that I have my center, I'm just gonna go ahead and set this aside. I'm gonna grab my 2 sheets of tearaway, and I'm going to measure them to the hoop. All right, so I have the bottom ring and 2 sheets of tearaway on top, and just hooping 101 for some of the newbies. Just make sure that the tearaway is covering all areas of the hoop. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to see underneath the tote bag, so I just kind of feel it out to make sure that it's covering all areas. Then I'm gonna go ahead and grab my top ring and press down. All right, so now I have it all hooped, and I also aligned the top little notch that we have on our ring to the center mark, just to make sure that everything is lined up perfectly and that our design does not come out crooked. Next up, I'm gonna go ahead and move my pantograph to the center mark right here so I can make sure that it's centered, and I'm going ahead and doing that with needle number 1. And that looks perfectly centered. So I'm just gonna leave it right there and just bring it up a little bit. And now I'm just going to go ahead and trace it and see where the design is gonna land. With Applique, one of the most important things to do is to make sure that your machine is set on automatic manual. And the reason being is because Applique is going to stop after every color stop. So what I'm actually going to do is just make sure that it's an automatic manual so that it doesn't continue running into my next color stop. And I'll explain, and you'll see exactly why in just a minute. So this right here is called a die line, and when you have an applique design, the first thing that's going to stitch is a running stitch called the die line. And what that does is that it's going to tell you where to place your fabric. So you're going to know that you need a piece of fabric that is bigger than this die line right here. Now clearly this fabric is a lot larger, and the reason why I'm leaving it to be much larger is because this is not going to be like your average applique where it finishes off with a satin stitch on the borders. Instead, I'm gonna cut around the satin stitch to kind of give the cat a little bit of texture and leave the felt as the edge. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and offset the frame so that I can cut around it. And this is what I meant about leaving the felt as an edge rather than the satin stitch, as you guys can see. So now I'm just going to cut out the excess of the fabric and leave a nice little outline here. So as you guys can see, this is not like traditional applique. Alrighty, so like I promised in the beginning of this episode, I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing applique. The first way has this little frayed edge, and it's very cute for these kind of like punk designs, so I really liked how this one turned out. Now the second way is going to be with the satin stitch edge. So I'm going to show you guys that now with my lettering. I'm going to embroider a name on it, and you guys are going to see how the traditional applique works. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and select my colors, and I'm just gonna go ahead and click on needle number 5 because I want to use that cute little teal color. I also want to remind you guys that when you're doing applique, set your machine on automatic manual. That way it stops between every color stop and it doesn't keep running on when you have to cut your fabric out. So this right here is my dye line, just like in the other applique process, and just like in the other one as well. I'm just gonna go ahead and place my fabric, and it's going to do a little tack down stitch. Now I'm gonna go ahead and bring my frame out. And now the main difference is how close I'm going to cut to the letters. I'm gonna cut close enough so that the satin stitch border will actually cover the fabric. All right, so I finished cutting around the E and it's pretty close to the edge. So now I'm just gonna go ahead, place the frame back and embroider the satin stitch over the E, and then I'm going to repeat the same process on the other 2 letters. Alrighty, so I'm gonna go ahead and take out the hoop. And since it's tearaway, I'm able to just easily tear it off. Of course, I'm doing so carefully because I don't want to tear any of the stitches. I honestly love this so much. This brings me back to my middle school days. This is something I totally would have rocked going there. So this is totally great if you want to market like school items and you want to kind of expand to a little bit edgier pieces for a little bit younger adults. This is so cute. I want to find someone named Ava to give it to. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and seeing just 2 different ways that you can do applique. I did also want to mention that with applique, you can have pre-cut letters rather than cutting it while it is in the hoop. And that is what you would use your temporary adhesive spray for. So we did not need the temporary adhesive spray for this project, but if you have a cutting machine and you have pre-cut letters, or perhaps you buy some online, then you would actually have to spray this on the pre-cut letter and place it back on. And of course, we do have some applique videos that show this process, so I encourage you guys to go watch that if you want to see. Before you go, don't forget, as usual, to like, subscribe, comment any questions, and anything nice that you want to say about me, of course. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Embroidery and Custom Apparel Mastery. In there, you can chat with me and thousands of other embroiderers. So if you have any questions, make sure to join the group. I have linked it below. Or if you just want to show off, then that's cool too.